there any other reasons that young people are choosing to rentvest instead of just buying a house to live in?
Yeah, I think it gives them a little bit more flexibility as well. Would probably be the main thing, and it's I think for the younger people, it's more around the lifestyle, wanting to be in an area where a lot of people want to be in those inner suburbs because that's where all the trendy restaurants are, cafes. Commuting maybe into the city might be just a short 10-minute tram ride, whereas their budget will only allow them to potentially buy a property that might be 45 minutes out of the CBD.
But there's other costs when you own a home that you don't pay as a tenant, right? Like home and contents insurance, repairs and maintenance, council rates, etc. And it adds up. So once you add all those in, it's almost always a lot cheaper to rent. If you're renting in a nice area, if you're buying or renting in a nice area, renting's almost always a lot cheaper. Yeah, plus you get the flexibility. And the other factor is welcome back to the Winner's Playbook. Today I'm here with Carlo and we're talking about one of the fastest growing property strategies, rent vesting. If buying where you live feels out of reach, but you still want to get on the property ladder, this might be the game changer you're looking for. Let's unpack what it is, how it works, and whether it could be right for you. Carlo, how you going?
Good, Billy. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad. What's going on for you this week?
It's been a busy past few weeks actually. So with interest rates coming down recently, that's adding a lot more activity in the finance space. Been pretty busy with my colleague Eddie being away on annual leave as well. So glad to have him.
Is he coming back? Is he back? Or what's happening?
He has entered the country, which is good. So he is back on deck today. But he hasn't had much sleep, so we'll have him fully back on deck on Monday, I'd say. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Be good to see him again.
Excellent. Good to hear. I've got a lot going on too. We're looking at moving house in a few weeks. And good timing here. I've got a work trip, a business trip to the US, which I'm very excited about. Leaving my poor partner here to start packing up there. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Either I'll come back and it'll all be sorted and I'll feel very, very guilty, or I'll come back and nothing will be done. And then we'll have, 8 days to move.
Mate, you better build up the brownie points, I can tell you that much.
Don't worry, this business trip is going to be so boring, I think, is with the story we'll go with.
Good luck with it.
Cheers. All right, let's get into it.
Sure.
So what is rent vesting and how does it work?
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting strategy because I must admit, even before I joined Link Wealth, I didn't have a lot of clients who actually went with this particular strategy. So it's essentially where you're purchasing a property not to actually live in. So it's more from an investment point of view. So because you're potentially wanting to buy a property where it may be more affordable or better suited for growth, but you're wanting to live in an area that suits you more personally. So I think it's one of the big things that I guess a lot of people are looking for nowadays is, they find properties in the area they want to live in, and they realize that it's just a little bit out of reach from a price point of view. So the option is, okay, well, maybe we just rent in that particular area and still get in the property market and buy a property, but may not be in that particular area. So definitely a growing strategy, and one a lot of people, well, as you know yourself, and a lot of people seem to go down that pathway nowadays.
Yeah, it is similar to you, Carlo. I've just seen it become a lot more popular the last few years. And I'd say ultimately it's probably because property prices have become so out of reach, particularly in inner suburbs of Melbourne and Sydney, that people have started to realize, well, I can actually live in those inner suburbs, but I can't buy, I can rent. And so that's then really, that's naturally then led to, okay, but does that mean I'm just going to be renting for life? Or how about we buy a property, rent it out, go rent where we want to be. That way you're still in the property market and you get to live where you want to be. So it's become a lot more popular. I've got a number of clients doing it. And in fact, we're about to do it personally. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, and I guess all the reasons, the reasons can be quite different as well. It might not be just that people want to live in a suburb for, it's a nice trendy suburb or it's close to restaurants and all that might of it. It could be from a work point of view as well, where the commute, if you're living too far away from where you work, or public transport's a bit out of reach as well, then people will go, well, you know what, why don't I rent somewhere that's closer to my office, make the commuting a lot easier, and then look to buy something in a different suburb altogether. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And the client I spoke to this morning, just occurred to me, they're renting purely because they need to get their kids into a certain school. And although they could buy in that school zone, they don't want to live there once the kids have finished school. So they're like, well, we'll just rent in the zone, get them into the school, then we'll go buy a house a few years later once the kids have finished up. So there's a number of reasons that make sense. Okay, so we've spoken about it a bit already, but are there any other reasons that young people are choosing to rentvest instead of just buying a house to live in?
yeah, I think it gives them a little bit more flexibility as well. Would probably be the main thing, and it's I think for the younger people, it's more around the lifestyle, wanting to be in an area where a lot of people want to be in those inner suburbs because that's where all the trendy restaurants are, the cafes. Commuting maybe into the city might be just a short 10-minute train ride, whereas their budget will only allow them to potentially buy a property that might be 45 minutes out of the CBD. So I think that's where the young people are really looking at, is like, how do I get in the property market at an affordable level, but still be able to maintain that nice lifestyle as well? Because I remember having this conversation with Eddie a few weeks ago when we did our latest podcast, was about the differences to 50 years ago to now. But everyone's now about wanting everything now rather than waiting for it to actually come about, and it's slowly. So I guess the younger generation nowadays want to have all that nice stuff now, and the nice stuff might be a nice trendy place to live in, good location, being able to go out to the restaurants for dinner, several times a week, whatever it might be. So this is their juggling act that they use, I guess.
Yeah, the other thing, there's another reason, and we did a whole podcast on it, and that's like the hidden costs of home ownership. So, because I've spoken to some people and they're like, well, if I figure out what the rent would be versus what a mortgage would cost, it's actually not that big a difference in some cases. But there's other costs when you own a home that you don't pay as a tenant, right? Like home and contents insurance, repairs and maintenance, council rates, etc. And it adds up. So once you add all those in, it's almost always a lot cheaper to rent. If you're renting in a nice area, if you're buying or renting in a nice area, renting's almost always a lot cheaper. Plus you get the flexibility. And the other factor is if you're not confident you're going to get growth in that area, like you can buy in a nice suburb, and then 5-7 years later you want to move. If the value of that house hasn't gone up, then you may have been better off just renting, right, that whole time, and not to deal with all the costs along the way, plus stamp duty up front too, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah, when you factor in, I guess, the stamp duty costs, and then also selling costs down the track as well, they add up into the tens of thousands of dollars. So if you don't make the right move from an investment point of view in terms of location, then it could cost you quite a bit. The other thing that I was thinking about as well is that I think there's also a lot more a growing thing where young, maybe not so much younger, but just people in general, they get a little bit stale in a property or an area that they might be living in. So they think that's a nice area and that's where they want to live. And then before they know it, 3 years down the track, it's like, you know what, there's actually better areas. And, they just want to move on a lot quicker nowadays rather than, people used to live in houses for 20, 30, 40 years. Nowadays, it's almost like every 4 or 5 years, people are going, okay, what's next? Now, they may not move to a different suburb. They may buy something close by, but people are always wanting to constantly move and upgrade and get something a little bit better as well. So, when you think about it from a renting point of view, you could potentially do that without the upfront costs or the selling costs they go with if you're buying it yourself. You can just give notice to your landlord and start finding something else as well.
Yeah, and so we've spoken about the renting, why you would rent, but we're talking about rent vesting. So what about the vesting? Tell us what the concept is there. Like, why are we Like, yeah, it's one thing to go and rent a property, but why are we renting and investing?
Yeah, I guess that's it. At the end of the day, you can just rent and that's it. But are you actually getting ahead in life and building your asset base? So the rent vesting is all about getting yourself into a nice area from a renting point of view, but also putting your money to good use and actually buying an investment property in a good area that's going to see that capital growth, whatever it might be. So there's tax benefits that go with holding an investment property as well. All that gets taken into consideration. So I can see why people want to go down in this pathway, purely because you get your cake and eat it as well. I suppose you get to live in the nice area that you want to live in, but you're still building that property side of things. You're on the property ladder and building that way. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and rightfully so, there's the fear of being out of the property market. Like, if you're in a position to be able to buy a house or buy a property and you choose not to because you're like, well, we'd rather rent and live in this other suburb or have flexibility. If you don't buy a property, there is that risk that the property market just keeps going up, 5, 10, 20%. And then 3 or 4 years later, you think, well, we should have bought something because now they're 20% more expensive. So I think that's why the investing side of things is critical, because although renting might be cheaper, you could find yourself worse off not being in the market at all.
Yeah, and I guess if you've got a property from an investment point of view, if you've done your right research and got yourself into bought in a decent location that's got good capital growth, well, that's going to obviously help later on down the track as well. That when you may be wanting to switch back to the other way and buy your own owner-occupied property in the area that you actually want, you may be able to utilize the equity in the investment property or sell that investment property, take the capital growth that you've made out of that and put it towards the property that you really want in the right location as well. So you're right.
What are some of the other cons or like downs? What are the downsides of doing this rent vesting strategy?
Yeah, I think the big one for me is just being at the mercy of the landlords.
Yeah.
Rents can go up at any point in time. The lease can end. Nowadays, I think there's a lot of people that would say that the renters maybe have a little bit more rights than the landlords themselves. But at the end of the day, they can still, your landlord could turn around and say, you know what, we're giving you 60 days. You're out of here. We're selling the property. I know Josh was put in that situation, a year or so ago now. So, you lose that control, I guess, of where you're actually living, because things can change very quickly and you may not have any control over that one whatsoever. You really are at the mercy of your landlord. So, and then obviously with rents potentially being, if we're in a market where the cost of rent is continuing to rise, I remember 10 years ago, whatever it might have been, might not even been that long. If you are wanting to rent a property, you typically go to view the property, go to the agent, go, yep, I want it, sign the paperwork. Nowadays, you literally have to put in like an offer, and you might be, one of 20 people that want to rent that same property. So that naturally drives the price up as well.
Well, you used to be able to offer below what they're asking, right? In some cases, like, oh, that's a bit high. How about I give you this? That's long gone, that deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like even for us, we're going back to renting for the first time in 8 years, for all those reasons, the flexibility and where we want to be and all that stuff. But we've become very used to being homeowners. We're very precious with our heating and cooling, so we got like split systems everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're moving into this house, which has what's it called, the evaporative cooling. And I'm like, Steph, I don't trust it. I don't trust this evaporative cooling. And I'm like, it occurred to me, this isn't our house, So we said, what we put in the offer, we said, on the condition we get a split system in the main bedroom and we'll help pay for it.
Yeah. I'll talk to you come summertime when your evaporative cooling isn't really working that efficiently. I know, because I've got one. The other thing is, like, even small little things like, I want to paint the walls because, I want to change the look of something like that. It's like when you're renting, it's like, I can't really do that. some landlords will allow people to the tenants to actually do that, but typically you're not going to spend too much money on a property that you're not going to get that money back on. You don't know how long you're going to be in there for as well. So, even simple things of just changing the look of a particular room, hanging up pictures. I know some tenants who have had to get permission just to hang a picture on the wall, whatever it might be. So I think just like you said, when you're so used to having your own home and doing your own things your way, to lose that level of control,
Yeah.
would take a bit to get used to. I can tell you that much. So
That's it. We'll see. We'll check in. We'll do a podcast in 6 months' time and say, all right, let's check in on the rent vesting strategy and see how that's going.
yeah, we'll take a note. If your hair's got a little bit more grey, well, you got no grey at the moment, unlike me. But if you got grey hair, well, then we'll know that maybe hasn't worked out as well.
That's it. All right. So we're speaking about renting and investing. On the investing side, how do you what do you buy? Like, what are we investing in? How do you choose? So we're now buying a property as an investment, not a home.
Yeah.
So how do you go about that?
Yeah, I think like anything, is just you unlike when you're buying a house to actually live in yourself, where there's a lot of emotion that goes into that type of buying. People fall in love with a particular suburb or a particular style of a home. When it comes to an investment property, you got to take that emotion out of it. It's more of a numbers game, making sure that you're doing the right level of research, and hence why we get a lot of our clients to engage a buyer's agent as well, because they do a lot of that research for you, making sure that you're in a good area that's got good capital growth, strong rental demand, good infrastructure around it, low vacancy rates, all that sort of thing. So it really does become more of a numbers game, getting those numbers to really line up for you, so that longer term you're going to really benefit from that, rather than, oh yeah, the house looks really nice to live in. You've got to just take that emotion completely out of it.
Yeah, and one strategy that's very popular or very common that often is not a good strategy is just keeping your old home and saying, right, that's my investment.
Yeah.
There's a number of reasons why that often isn't a good strategy. So have you seen that happen before, Carlo?
I've seen it happen once before, where I wouldn't say it backfired, but people will still had a lot of emotional attachment to that particular property. And they weren't, they really struggled to get the right tenants in the property itself. They were reluctant to, potentially sell it when might have been a really good time to sell as well. So, and the other thing as well is that typically when you bought a property at the start, you're paying principal and interest on your loan, you're building up a lot of equity in that particular property, and then you move it across to an investment property. A lot of people want to obviously be able to maximize the tax benefits as well. So they may switch to an interest-only loan instead, which means if they paid a whole chunk off that particular house, you can't then re-gear against that particular property. You have to basically keep that same loan. So your interest cost might be a little bit lower, which means that tax offset's not as great as what it may have been if you bought one from scratch.
Yeah, so that talks back to the pros and cons of this strategy. We didn't talk about tax too much. That's a big pro is if you in the rent vesting strategy and you've got that investment property, sorry, all the costs are tax deductible, all the interest, all the expenses are tax deductible. So if you just use the former home as the investment property, that's often inefficient because it may not have a lot of debt left on it, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of interest to be claiming.
Yeah.
It's also the downside of the tax situation is you're now going to pay land tax on that property, which you don't pay as a homeowner. And then probably the last thing I guess to know on that is the 6-year rule too. So if you move out of your house and go rent somewhere and use your house as an investment property, you do still have a capital gains tax exemption for a period of time after you leave. So there's a few moving parts to consider. But I think ultimately, whatever property you own, it needs to be an investment. So if your former home doesn't have a strong case as an investment, then you might need to revisit that.
Yeah, well and truly.
Okay, and so who do you think rent vesting is a good fit for, and who should avoid the idea altogether?
It's an interesting one because I don't want to stereotype people as well, but I've always seen that rent vesting is probably good more so for the younger people, younger buyers out there who want to enjoy the lifestyle, the flexibility, but also want to start building wealth through property as well. So I think that's where it's more aimed at. Having said that, I've seen people, much older follow that same strategy as well, probably for different reasons though. Like we talked about earlier on, might be for, getting kids into a particular exclusive school where it might be within a school zone itself, but they're not able to actually afford a property within that. They potentially go and invest somewhere else, buy property, invest somewhere else, and then, rent in that particular area so that they're within that school zone. Kids get to go to the school they want to go to, et cetera. So, but that ties in, I guess, the flexibility side of things and lifestyle, wrapping that all up into one. So, but I think, I haven't seen too many people probably my age go down that pathway. But yeah, so I would always say that, more for the younger age group that just need to get into or want to get into the property market at an affordable range, but also wants the flexibility of that nice lifestyle as well.
Yeah, spot on. And with the age group thing, what I've found talking to clients, the reason they're older, but I don't know how you classify older, but the people who have been homeowners their entire adult lives, they find it to be a big leap to be like, oh, what? I'm going to go back and rent now. Why would I do that? So you do need to have a bit of an open mind, I think, and you have to have good reasons to do it. Like, don't just do it because it seems like a trendy or smart thing to do or whatever. Do it because it makes sense in your situation and you're going to benefit from it. The other one to avoid doing it is you do need some discipline. So you can't forget about the investing part. So if you go back to renting and you're not doing the investing part properly, then you can be a lot worse off, right? Rather than, as I say, buying a house, at least you're building up equity over time. But if you go back to renting and then you don't do the investing part properly, then you could find it tough to get back into the market.
Yeah, exactly right. And
Yeah.
the other thing I was thinking about as well was, maybe whether we go back to the age groups or whatever it might be, but someone my age, we typically crave that type of stability as well. To go from having the same home for 20 odd years, and even if it's just 10 years, but you've got that stability of it's my home, I can do what I want. It's everything I want it to be, and then you make that change to go into being a renter. It's almost like that great Australian dream of owning your own home. All of a sudden you're going, okay, now I'm moving away from that dream and going back to maybe where I first started. It's almost like doing a full circle to a certain degree. But like I said, if you've got the right type of discipline, in terms of your approach, then, you can make it work. That's true. And we've seen it happen with a lot of our clients.
Yeah. So, well, it's just about having a plan, isn't it? And having reasons, having some logic behind it and some advice behind it if you need to make sure you execute properly and you don't get 6 months in.
Yeah. It's definitely not a topic that you can just have a conversation at a barbecue and go, I'm just going to do this on Monday and not do much research about it. And, we bang on about this all the time in all of our podcasts as well. It's about, getting the right people, right team around you to give you the right level of advice. So obviously you would speak to your clients with regards to the financial advisory side of things and, from a cash flow and all that side of things. We would advise clients in terms of the right lending structure as well, getting the right, maybe a buyer's agent involved as well, so that you're picking the right investment property as well to go with all this. So you get the right team of people around you, then definitely makes the strategy work a hell of a lot better.
Spot on. Well, I think that's a good place to wind it up. And we will note to have a little follow-up podcast, and I can let everyone know how the rent vesting's coming along.
I look forward to that.
But yeah, look, owning a property doesn't have to mean living in it. Rent vesting can open up new doors only if you play it smart. If you like today's episode, hit follow, leave a review, and share it with someone who's thinking about getting into the market. See you next time in the Winner's Playbook. Thanks, Carlo.
Thanks, Billy. See you, mate.